Turning our attention to Europe, the Renaissance, late 1400s, early 1500s, led to an explosion of global trade. The global trade was caused by a desire for Asian trade goods, spices, silk, various other things, but also because the new technologies coming from other areas, places like the astrolabe and other devices from, say, the Middle East, really helped to allow longer sea voyages. By the end of the 15th century, we had four major powers in Europe, Portugal, Spain, England, and France, and all of them were looking for those valuable trade routes over into the Asian territories. The problem is that the land routes were both expensive and they were controlled by the Byzantines and then later the Ottoman Turks, which were charging high fees in order to get through the territory. So all of these powers were looking for sea routes trying to get into Asia. For example, Portugal, led by Henry the Navigator, was going around the Cape of Africa, the bottom of Africa, and up into places like India as early as the late 1400s. Columbus convinced the Spanish to fund a journey trying to circumnavigate the globe. Now, please be careful about the mythology around this. Everyone knew that the world was round. Columbus didn't have some special insight that the world was a sphere. What his mistake was that he thought the world was smaller than it was. The Greeks actually, in 2000 BCE or so, had calculated the circumference of the Earth within a few hundred miles. Columbus thought it was about 6 times smaller than what it actually was. So he was able to convince Ferdinand and Isabella to fund this trip to get to the Asian territories. He goes. Luckily, the Americas were there. He was about to run out of food. They hit some of the islands in the West Indies. The island that he reached, actually, he named La Isabela, and they found Native Americans there, particularly the Taínos, a very peaceful set of Native Americans, the population of which is going to be gone within 100 years. They looked for gold while he mapped out several other territories in the West Indies, and he returned back to Spain with slaves and gold. And because of the newly invented printing press, and because it was such a wild thing, that this newly discovered area that nobody knew it existed, spread very quickly. Rulers were looking for the gold that Columbus had brought, and if there was no gold, they would take the slaves, Native Americans as slaves. Missionaries went to the New World to convert souls towards God, Christian missions. One of the things they brought with them unintentionally was disease, things like smallpox and anthrax and such, which just decimated the native populations. We'll get there later. And this spurred off even more exploration. People like John Cabot in England, which would find Canada and lay the basis for English claims in North America. And Magellan, who tried to circle around the world. His crew made it. Out of the 280 or so that went, only about 9 came back of the original mission. But they did prove that you could go around the world on a ship.